What's up, you guys? Justin Rivas here. Tonight we're talking about this, the Panasonic Lumix FZ2500. Have you seen this thing? It's a beast. Like, it's a big camera. Compact, all built in, not interchangeable lens, but it's got a 1-inch sensor, which is a good size, slightly smaller than micro four thirds, which is typical for Panasonic, but still a big sensor. It's got this giant piece of Leica glass. Well, it's like Panasonic plastic lens, but with Leica glass on the front. That's a 24 to 480 millimeter equivalent 2.8 to 4.5. Pretty impressive. Shoots 4K, but also shoots the same data rates as the GH4 basically. Close to the GH5, but 4K, 24 frames per second, 30 frames per second, but at 1080p, it'll do that 200 megabit per second, super high resolution for, a compact camera, pulling a lot of data out of it. It's got ND filters here built in, so if you're shooting in the bright sunlight, you can go ahead and knock that down like a number of different chunks, which is pretty cool. The optical image stabilization in this is wild. Wild at how well it stabilizes when you're hand holding. I'll put up some clips here. And even when you go to move, the motion ends up being okay too, which is fairly good. Lots of times it ends up being pretty jittery motion. What else can I tell you? It's got 2 control dials here at the top. I don't know if you can see, one here and one here, which is really handy. So you kind of got full manual control over shutter and aperture. You can do zooms, which are actually pretty nice and slow. This doesn't move too, which is actually kind of nice, but when you're holding this, it'll do kind of slower pushes and slower pulls. Does 120 frames per second for that super slow motion-y effect, which is also very cool. It's got the flip out touchscreen for being able to see and do pretty much everything. Overall, it's a pretty compelling package. It's got microphone input, so you can plug a microphone into it. The other thing it's got there, which may be a little bit tricky to see, is a headphone jack as well, so you can monitor the audio of what's going into the camera, which is pretty cool. It's got all the different photo modes, time lapses, 4K photos, different things. Negatives, because pretty much everything else so far has been a positive. I just have to say too, Panasonic's touchscreen menu system, mwah, love it. When you're shooting in 4K on this camera, the crop factor, this says 24 to 480 here on the front, but that actually ends up changing with 4K to 36 to 720. Wow. So you get a chunk longer zoom range out of it when you're in 4K, but you don't get as wide in 4K. So this is a 36 millimeter on a full frame equivalent for width when you're in 4K. Focusing on it, if you're talking about autofocus, it's okay if you're kind of going from something close and kind of working to distance, but I found if I was trying to come from something that was, in focus far away and then come really close to something, it would take it kind of forever to be able to figure it out. And sometimes it gets it, sometimes it doesn't. That's for video. Panasonic's focusing for photos is lightning quick, so that part of it I think would be really good. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of big, compared to this Sony A5100. It's a crop sensor. It's actually a chunk bigger, sensor, and I don't know if I'll be able to get this in here, but I mean, really no comparison. But you've got this gigantic lens on here, which is covering a massive zoom range. So my big question though was, would I be able to blur that background? Because, the smaller the sensor gets, the harder it is to blur the background. And I mean, this lens says it's, 2.8 to 4.5, but crop factor on 1-inch sensors is 2.78. So that also means it blurs the background almost 3 times less than a full frame camera. So, it's just something to be aware of. It blurs the background about half as much as a typical crop sensor camera. So, can you blur the background? And I mean, you're seeing absolutely you can blur the background and the foreground, provided you set it up right. Obviously, the closer you get to your subject or the more you're zooming, the more exaggerated that effect is going to be. The only other thing that I found a little bit annoying that was tough to manage was, as you're zooming in and out, which this one with the, you can do actually these nice push zooms or pull zooms pretty slowly, which works out nice. But because that aperture is changing, the light's changing. So if you're shooting in full manual and trying to push in, it's getting progressively darker, or when you pull back, it's getting progressively brighter. That's the only thing. You could maybe do an auto ISO or just do some other things to try and offset that, but you lose a little bit of that full manual control. Other than that, I just gotta say, like, it's a compelling all-around package for, I think just over $1,000. You're getting this gigantic zoom range, you're getting a good size sensor, you're getting 4K recording, you're getting, a lot of goodness out of this camera. Could you vlog with it? Yeah, you could. I mean, it'd be a little bit heavy and kind of awkward. I'd be holding it probably by the front here, or you could, like, I'd get my, you could throw one of these on here and, have something that would be a bit of a compelling package. It'd be wild to vlog with a lens that could cover that much range. Like, your storytelling abilities would be actually kind of interesting. I like vlogging at wider than a 24mm equivalent, but that's certainly better than a lot of kit lenses. So if we want to talk about a vlogging option, this would be an interesting vlogging option. A big, heavy one, but very interesting. But you can put all your microphones on top. You could attach all the things. You got the selfie screen. It's overall a pretty neat kit. And I look forward to checking out more a little bit. But so far, I'll tell you, the video looks fantastic. I even shot some video at ISO 6400. It was fine. Like, even, it was fine. Yeah. I think I'd love to hear from you guys. Have you heard about this? Have you considered this? Have you used it? What are your thoughts? Like, would you struggle to not have a lens that you couldn't change out? That's definitely something I worry about. And, you can't blur the background as hard as, if you're shooting Panasonic, getting like the Nocticron 42.5 f1.2, that one you can really blur the background. But this one, if you were to get far enough back, zoom in, you'd be able to do something pretty special. So, I don't know. I think if you were traveling, you could only take one camera, or you didn't want to swap lenses and you just wanted one, and as well as like the price is compelling. Neat option. Anyway, I've talked long enough. I'm Justin Reeves. Thank you for watching. Burp.